It's my pleasure today to present to you Project a Powerful Leader Presence at Board and Other Important Presentations, a topic unfortunately not covered in any of what I'll call the basic 101 programs. So we like to think of this as maybe presentations 202, the advanced stuff that executives have to do that really make a difference. So it's our pleasure doing this. Again, for those of you who are familiar with Presentation Excellence itself, which is our core company, we have an April 2nd workshop here in New York City. I think the early bird ends any day this week. You can register for it. You can find that at presentationexcellence.com if you want to register. But our focus there again is basic skills and training so you're a more effective presenter. But once you've got those skills, how do you really handle yourself with the most important presentations that you do? And that's our focus. What we're going to do is address four key issues. What is leader presence? Why is it so important, especially in today's world of social marketing where we need to constantly promote our brand? What are the attributes needed that you need to communicate? Um, how do you project those attributes? How do you make sure they resonate with your audience, that they receive them and then can accept them? And then we're going to learn a little bit of the experience of people who've actually earned the kind of leader presence we're talking about, some heroes for all of us, how they've done it and what they've done. So with that, let's begin. And if you have any questions, I'd like to remind you, you can list your questions on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer them all at the end. So what is leader presence? Maybe to answer the question, we should go backwards. Most of us think about sales as a product or a service that we're selling. The reality of the situation is when people buy into your proposition, so it's the buyer perception I want to switch to for a minute. What they're doing is they may want to buy into your product and your service eventually, but what they're mostly buying into is you, the seller. Are you the kind of person they want to deal with? Are you the kind of person that they want to trust? Will you convey that information? If you're working in a large company, and we work with many executives on the way to that top C level position, are you the person who we know has the ability to be a leader, to stimulate the other people in your team and encourage them and empower them to move to new grounds? Are you really walking the walk and talking the talk, getting people to be creative and innovating? All of that comes from a quality we call leader presence. So ultimately, its basic definition is the ability to influence others. If you don't have it, generally you're just conveying information. And these people, whether it's Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, or Richard Branson, clearly are people who influence people at all times, all over the world. Um, and as somebody once said at the Supreme Court when they talked about a completely different topic, pornography, I know it when I see it. When you think about leader presence, it's similar. I know it when I see it. The key is that you're consistently projecting key personality attributes that affect others' decision making. And it's an important definition because it's all about people making decisions. That's why people come to presentations. In our basic presentation program, we'll make the point all the time that people don't really come to a presentation for information. There's a glut of information in the world. What people come to a presentation for is to learn something that's going to help them make a decision. Maybe it's confirming something that they already knew, or maybe it's brand new information. But the ultimate part about leader presence is that you're touching on that key final point, decision making. And what you're demonstrating to them is that you have the skills, the authenticity, the integrity, the trust, that what you say is the way it is, that you're being authentic. And those are some of the qualities that you need to convey. And it's the consistency that's very important. Inconsistent people are not going to have it. They'll know it right away. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. That's not what a leader does. A leader is always consistent. So what are some of these key attributes? And again, the pictures that we've used in this presentation are a demonstration of leaders that have made a difference, and we know it. Still, Bill Gates, obviously the richest man in the world, who's turned from one career of building Microsoft to where it is as the leader, to now working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, helping stamp out diseases, helping education, etc., worldwide. And Jack Welch, who at his height of retirement took, after a 20-year stay at General Electric, to the top of the market cap where Apple is today, and has, in my opinion, one of the most remarkable leadership qualities of being able to decide he wants to step down and have 5 people ready to take over his position, qualified, perfectly skilled, etc., of which only one can get it. So many companies we read about every day have a leader who wants to step down, and then there's a scuffle. How long does it take to find someone? Do we find someone internal? Do we find someone external? Microsoft went through that when Steve Ballmer quit. How do we find the right person? Very rarely do we have a successor in mind, but more rare is having multiple potential successors, and that's what Jack Welch left. So what are the qualities that he left in his people and that he demonstrated as a leader? Well, these are the list, and I'm just going to go to authentic. It's being who you are all the time. Trustworthy. Ultimately, when we buy a product or a service or an idea from someone, do we really trust that person? Do we really believe it's true? And it's funny because we are now so much in the social media world that it's hard to determine what is and what isn't. But the concept of authenticity and trust and much of these other attributes are one that we get over time from consistency or by using additional information that's accessible, which is why meeting face to face ultimately is so critical, and helps people make a decision on whether or not this person really has the qualities they want. There's an old picture I use in many of my presentation of a person who's angry and about to blow his top and yelling out, full of stress, yelling out, "I'm peaceful and calm." And we laugh because we know that's not what it is. So body language is important. I work with, as many of you know, I'm a teacher, both here in the United States, and actually this summer I'll be back in Shanghai teaching. And I work with young people all the time because they are our future and they deserve our investment. And that's why we sponsor mentoring internships as a group to help companies really have more interns and help them learn while they're there through being mentoring. And it's really critical when I explain to them that that initial interview they're going to have, that whole cycle is when they send a resume and people look you up on LinkedIn or whatever the case may be. And then from there, they do a Skype interview over the phone. But if they really want you and it's humanly possible, they will call you in. Somebody just went through 5 interviews in a given day at Morgan Stanley, one kind of more grueling than the other. But through the coaching, I focused on exactly what we're doing today. Needs to demonstrate his leader presence to each one around the issues that are important so each trusts. And the good news was the interview was last Friday, and this morning he got the job offer. And we're very proud of him. Third is being confident. And that confidence is really critical because it allows you to continue moving forward on what you're trying to do. There's a phenomenal book I just finished about working under pressure. Okay, and what is pressure and how do we cooperate? And what the authors leave you with is what they call a coat of armor, COTE, and the C in that is confidence. If you have confidence, it gets you through. And what's wonderful about confidence is when you have it, you're enthusiastic to share it with people, you exude it, and people get it. Engaging. Today, more than ever, because time is as precious and we're all multitasking and we're all somewhat tired and overloaded with what we're doing, is your conversation, is your presentation especially, is it engaging? Because if it is, it doesn't take very long, literally 15 to 30 seconds for someone to switch off and say, this is not worth my time, I'm going to do something else. And usually it's that iPhone or the BlackBerry or some other work that's being done. Are you an expert? Do you really know the material? Now, many people feel in the initial presentation they have to demonstrate all of their expertise. And the answer is no. Just like Google gives you the option of looking for the information you want so you can see the answer to a question from many, many different perspectives and doesn't put it all in one article. Similarly, an expert needs to convey that expertise and the ability to reason it through and then be there as an authority to follow up. And when I coach people on presentations, many of them are just afraid they're going to be asked questions they don't know answers to. And the key is to be confident that you know what you know and that you're authentically presenting it. And when you don't know it, say that and follow up. And it's amazing how that follow up distinguishes you from the people who don't do that, and that's the key. You need to be credible. That comes from your experience. What's your background? Have you done this before? Etc. And finally, inspirational. We don't get people to follow our vision by writing out the task. What we do is we get people to follow the vision by being inspirational, by making people find the common purpose, the common cause, go into themselves and find the passion for that and be willing to work forward to make the difference. And so those are the key attributes that have to be conveyed as a leader if you want people to buy your ideas and buy your capability of moving forward. And so the question probably you're asking is, wow, it's a lot of things I have to do. How do I build my leader presence? Well, first answer is you have to recognize that there are going to be situational opportunities and you need to capitalize on them. Whether you're networking, connecting with other people, whether you're building your brand or even taking your brand to the next level, each of those will be a situational opportunity where the strategy you've built for your leader presence will tell you here's a trigger that I can do something. And that strategy comes down to the second part of compelling message, an ability to convey who and what you stand for and why it's so important to follow you in a succinct, powerful message. And when I say powerful, as this picture kind of shows, everyone's staring at the speaker. Okay, that's not the traditional audiences I go to with investor presentations, public companies presenting, and half the people have already skimmed the numbers, look at them, and now they're somewhere else. Delivering it powerfully means really paying attention, wanting to hang on every word, every nuance in presenting it, the style that the person's using, etc. And you do those three things, recognizing them, building your message, delivering it powerfully while projecting your presence, because you're keeping in mind all the time that what you want them to do is sum you up as authentic, trustworthy, expert, credible, etc. That gives them the reason to follow you. And remember, that's the key quality in leadership, is that there are people who are following you, and that's what we have to do. So each presentation we have gives us an opportunity. That's the key reason in presentation excellence we focus on this. Gives you an opportunity to demonstrate what your leader presence is and convey it through the different qualities. And so what I often tell people, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. But that's in terms of the message. It's also how you deliver it as a person and as a situational presence. In other words, how are you conveying it? Are you inspiring people to do it? So it's not just the content. Too many people in sales and marketing and financial information think it's all about the data. The data is critical, but it's how you interpret it. It's how you package it. That's the key to the challenge, and that's the reason this is so important to do. So what you need to do is ask questions before you do a presentation. When we do our training programs, whether they're group training programs that we do for corporations, or we do large workshops for associations and other organizations like that, or we do our public one like we're doing April 2nd, the first thing we say is, okay, try to really understand who are you presenting to. And as you can see, we have lots of different markets. So if I'm trying to sell a new healthcare program that responds to the Affordable Care Act to my employees, I'm giving them information so they can understand how this is going to make their life better and they decide whether they want to buy through the company, go through an exchange, what it is they want to do. Whereas an investor, I'm not just giving them the information about what's around today, because investors don't buy on past performance. What they're buying on is future performance or projections of future performance. And so what I need to do with an investor is use the past as an example of a platform from which they can see I will catapult to higher capabilities, and that strategic growth is planned. We are capable of doing it, and that our past experience, our ability to be profitable for 28 quarters or something like that, and raise our dividends, etc., is a demonstration that we are in control. When you're dealing with prospects and clients, remember the goal is to take the prospect and move them to the clients. It's a sales process. And one of the things you need to know is that if a person is going to go through multiple steps in a presentation, each presentation is different. That's right. It's not the same thing you repeat over and over and over again as you move from who are you and what's this about to tell me more details about it. Why do I know you're going to be able to solve the problem if we do that? And how do you ultimately compare in terms of long-term support to your competitors? Each of those is a different message, and the prospects move through this chain before they become clients, and your presentation has to be different. And as a leader, you're leading them through that decision-making process, and that's the quality of the information you're providing. If it's a strategic ally or a joint venture partner, you're in this different situation again because that audience wants to know, can I trust you? Can I rely on you? Are you going to stay committed? Or are you going to drop out after the first problem we have? If I'm dealing with the media, I have to be very careful because they have their own way of conveying information. We ran for many years public relations, investor relations firms, taking companies and doubling their market cap in less than 18 months. From $500 million to $1 billion, for example, by using effective coordinated messaging to the media so that they got it and could convey it to their audiences, which was for us both public and investors. But I think the hardest one of all is boards and key committees because everyone assumes they're very similar to the others, and they're not. If you are presenting to the board of directors, in almost all cases, the information you're going to present is sent to them in advance of that meeting. That already is different because in most cases, they walk into the meeting without the information. Second, because they're not there every day and they know this is an important meeting, that many of them are getting paid very well, they will actually read the stuff. They'll look at it. They'll understand it. So if you're going to regurgitate what's in the information they've already read, they've already seen, and they already know, you don't have a leader's presence because leaders take you to the next level. The board wants to be your advisor and help you get to that next level. So your presentation has to take a different tact and a different tone, and that's the key. So with each presentation, again, you're asking the question, what's my goal? And it's very important. If you notice, I really don't have the word inform here because I hear that all the time, and it's not about information. It's really about taking it to the next level of educating people so they know how to make better decisions or empowering them by giving them the arsenal of information they need to do it. Are you inspiring them, motivating them, especially when there's a major challenge on there? Are you engaging them? Engaging them means getting them to really want to hear everything you do, to be physically and mentally present, and more important, being able to say, how does this really relate to me and where do I take it to the next level? As I mentioned, I teach, and one of the criteria in the presentations the students have to do to the class is how many questions are asked by the class. Because really great presentations generate questions of one sort or another. And that's a great measure to do. So instead of praying for no questions, you pray for questions. For some people, the information they're presenting isn't so much a job of selling a product or service. It's really an idea or a concept. And maybe the idea is to say, you know something, I am a leader and you didn't think of me that way. And therefore, I should be given more recognition. So presenting your brand might be your real goal, and that may be an acceptable goal. How are you different from all the people? And when I interview interns, I very often get groups of interns, and after going through all the technical questions, I end with one last question. I'm only going to take one or two interns out of the six of you. Why should I pick you? Which means each one has to answer the next question with what's their brand? Why is their brand valuable to me? And when you get answers like, well, I really need this position, that's not an answer. And so you have to understand how to present it. And finally, no matter what we're focused on, even though the key to great presentations we call ADAP, audience driven authentic presentations, and is focusing on the audience, what you really want to do is also focus just once on yourself, making sure that whatever you're doing is consistently giving the value that you want, that you're a leader. So you're always creating and maintaining your leader presence. Today it's harder to connect with people than ever before. Attention spans are shrinking. We spend literally 10-15 seconds before we say yes or no. It's one of the reasons in great presentations you have a quick agenda, and if it's an investor presentation, you have a one slide that sums up what you're doing. So people either go, this is what I'm interested in or not. Because if they're not, let them go out and let them focus on what's interesting in their life so the people who are left will focus what's interesting in your joint life. The time for meetings is declining. It's funny, we're all 24/7 workers. Very few of the executives I work with don't say to me sometimes, Jerry, can I call you on a Sunday and can we rehearse this and go over it? It's an amazing process. We've got a much more of a fungible clock, though we subdivide those parts where we don't want to be on call, where we want to get work done. But the time for meeting per se is getting smaller and smaller. Why? Because we can prepare in advance, we can focus our attention in advance, and use that time to a critical mass. So we're not doing that. So the concept of 1 hour, 2 hour meetings should be replaced. I do this with all my CEOs through Vistage and other organizations, but mainly my Vistage group, where I buy them time by getting these meetings from 1 hour down to 15 minutes twice a week, where we get to the basic decisions that have to be done with all the people having most of the information in front, and then at the meeting qualifying it, answering it, and then being able to take the next level. People don't want to sit around. That's why they have fallen asleep. That's why people come in late. All the body language will tell you that. But if the meeting is really good and really valuable, it's amazing how they all show up on time. And finally, we have distractions coming from everywhere. Okay, I mean, sometimes I walk down a street and I think to myself, it must have been amazing if I came from 100 years ago today, and I'm walking down the street today, and you're seeing people having two hands. One hand has an iPhone or some kind of other smartphone, and the other one has Starbucks coffee. That didn't exist 100 years ago. None of that did. Okay, people are constantly working and talking, no matter what they're doing, where they're going, or being distracted all the time. So the concepts we used to have need to be changed and updated. And as a leader, you need to conceptualize how to do that. So when I grew up, people would say to me, well, no one wants 1,000 words. You could paint them a picture. Okay, but the reality of it is I can paint 30 PowerPoint images, but nobody really wants that either. Okay. Today, people want to be able to conceptualize the issues because they don't have the time and attention for it. So don't give them the 1,000 words and don't give them 30 PowerPoint images unless it's really critical to something you're doing for a long presentation. What you really want to do is get to the essence immediately, and you want to keep the words as short as possible. Leaders deal with pictures, they paint visions. We're going to win the World Cup. Here's what we need to be able to understand. And now you're dealing with enthusiasm and energy and leadership, and that's what makes the difference. So it's again, connecting is harder because we have to really think through how will I best resonate with my audience. And it's that ability to do so that makes the big difference when you get to the important presentations, such as a board presentation, which we will get to toward the end, because I think it's the most important and most difficult one that we need to deal with. And here's the hard part. None of us are working from a level ground. All of us live in a world of presentations where they're not exciting. This was a great study that was quoted by the Wall Street Journal, page one. You don't often get page one news. And what they did on this presentation is they made an interesting observation that they did a study, 200 large company VPs, over 80% of them tell me presentations put them to sleep or they're boring. Now think about that. How many of us want to be in a situation where we know the overwhelming majority of people put people asleep or are boring? We don't want to be that. So again, as a leader, you need to recognize, how do I overcome it? It's like I'm very often asked when I'm presenting somewhere, they'll say, Jerry, you're a powerful presenter. Can you do the one after lunch? Because you know how people are asleep. Because I take that situation into account and I adjust my presentation for it, I'm usually willing to accept it. But I know the burden is much harder on me because I've got to keep people awake and stimulated after they've had this nice, comfortable lunch, and many of them have already been up 8 hours, etc. We work against the current in cases like that. But if we do it and we know that they're not exciting and we work hard on maintaining our leader presence, we can make a difference. And the final part, as you probably all know, is most people fear public speaking. It is the single biggest fear. There was a great book that came out many years ago by Mike Klepper, I'd Rather Die Than Give a Speech. At the time, I ran Brilliant Image, which is the predecessor for Presentation Excellence, and I turned to my partner when this book came out, and I said, Mike, I think we should close up and go into the funeral business. I said, everyone would rather die, apparently, and I think they're going to die no matter they like it or not. We can make a lot more money. And I said, well, before we do it, let's read the book. And here's the good news. Nobody really wants to die. So it's a great, great concept, not the truth. But it's amazing that 45% would rather have a cavity filled. Okay. Why? In a world where we're anxious about ourselves, we don't really know how to present well. We haven't gotten the training. We've learned 3 R's, but we haven't learned the big P, presenting. It's a challenge. This is one of the reasons Presentation Excellence was created, to help companies. If you go to our website and you read about us, we started with a company who asked, how do I win 93% of our deals? 93%. And I want to go to 94, and that's why I'm calling you. Can you help me? How many of us can say something like that? And that's how Presentation Excellence was founded after I sold Brilliant Image to Alola. And the worst part for many of you is that you work in organizations where people have presentation rules. Supposed experts, the communications people, have rules that they've taken forever and ever and think these are great rules, but they're really not. So what happens is someone creates a template, but it may not be conducive. When I train, there isn't almost a single class where someone doesn't come in and say, well, I have to use my template from this company. I had a giant company, a Fortune 50, 100 company once, whose presentations all had 8 bullets on it. And I've said my rule is 5 plus or minus 2, and it better be minus if it's going to be in any of those directions. And they had 8, and I said, where do you do it? And said, that's one of the rules on our thing. We all have to have 8 bullets. And I said, do you really want to read them? No. Does anyone want to read them in your organization? No. So why does that make sense? Well, that's what we're told to do. So using someone else's template is probably destructive. And leaders need to change the rules. They need to create rules that accomplish the goal. And the goal in this case is to provide a meaningful communication that's going to resonate with the audience. It's going to inspire the action that you're trying to do. And that's what you need to do. So don't follow other templates if they don't work. A perfect example of this is one of our training programs that we do for the public. We got somebody from a Yahoo address who came into for the presentation. And I looked at this presentation and I realized this person is the CEO of a very large multi-billion-dollar company. So I'm kind of curious what the issue is. And as we start doing the presentation, he goes around. He had been running for many years, a $2 billion division of a giant company, and was an effective presenter, presenting sometimes to the street. He wasn't the CEO, just the division president. And to the teams and internationally, and he felt very good and very comfortable. And now he'd been promoted to this new CEO position where he has to talk to the street, and he has to talk because it's obviously the buck stops at his desk. And he's using the presentation from the communications department, and everything's falling flat. And so he came. He said, I heard Presentation Excellence came to our program, blah, blah. And so we started working with him, and I said, you're following their template, aren't you? And he goes, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I said, no, you're the leader. You're the CEO. Does it help you? He said, no, but I'm not sure what to do. And so that was our training. And the good news is the stock's up 25%, and he's smiling again, and life is good. So what you want to do is use your own authentic way of communicating. What these rules very often do is ask you to follow rules about material and how you handle it. So one of the rules I see at boards is, well, we're going to collect the information a week in advance. We're going to circulate it to everybody, and then you're going to regurgitate what you've just given them in the presentation. That's a destructive thing because it doesn't give you any confidence presenting it. You kind of know they know it. You're not adding any value. You look like a technician or a gorilla or a monkey, but not like a hardworking, forward-thinking thought leader, which is what you want to communicate it as. And they're sitting there going, boy, this is boring. Okay, so the key thing is to understand in board presentations where this happens most of the time, what they really are looking for you to do is to be the thought leader. They're looking for the leadership. So what they want you to do in a nutshell is not repeat what you've given them. It's basically say, I'm going to highlight this 27-page presentation in 3 slides. This is what we did. This is why we did it. This is where we think we're going to go. What I'd like to do now is focus on why we think our next direction should be in the following direction, and then open it up for a discussion, a conversation with you as my advisors. And I did this with one president of a Fortune 50 company who she presented to the board. She tried this new approach, and for her it was really critical because she gets stuck reading slides, so this eliminated that need. And at the end of the presentation, they were sitting at the edge of their seats for 1 full hour talking about where the next 5 years direction globally was coming. 52% of this group's business came globally. And she was clearly understood to be the leading star in this company. Okay, it's following the rules that communicate effectively that's critical. Why? In part is the third part. When you're spending your mental energy to overcome the obstacles. Well, how do I make this more exciting, but I got to put 8 bullets in you? How do I do that in a way that's not totally boring? You're spending time not on how do I communicate effectively, but how do I overcome a obstacle to success. Again, all energy should be focused on one and only one thing: exciting the audience to be able to make the best decision possible, keeping their energy high so they can make that best decision. And it should not be about the rules that you have to follow. Why? Because when you do, and just think of it as a fixed amount of energy, you're losing confidence in your own ability to present powerfully because you know you can't do it well. You know you're tying one hand behind your back and you're putting a band-aid over your mouth and wondering why nobody can see you or hear you. That's why presentation rules should only be used as guidelines if they help you. From there you take it. And so after over 5,000 client presentation help for 20 of these presenters we've had, from Fortune 500 company CEOs to IPO clients to people doing startups with venture. We've come up with a really simple formula to help everybody get it, and it's really simple. It's called ADAP, Audience Driven Authentic Presentations. I mentioned this before. We call it ADAP because it's easier to see and easier to understand when you do it. It's all about the audience. That's the only reason you're presenting. And if you remember that, the second part that's great is you're going to give them what they need and how they need it. And the third part of that is you're going to remember that because they're the focus, it's not about you. So that anxiety about, well, what if I make a mistake? It doesn't matter if they've gotten the right information. What if I forget something? If it doesn't matter because they have a mouth and they can speak and ask you questions. So audience driven actually allows you to present better at every level of a presentation. And the second part is it needs to be an authentic presentation. It needs to communicate the information that's critical to them in a way that you feel comfortable. When you start presenting something you don't feel comfortable on, exponentially, you lose energy, you lose confidence, and you lose the ability to connect with the audience. So if you want to have a great future, as the saying goes, the best way to predict it is to control it. If you want to predict where your career is going to go, focus on controlling it by always asking the question, is this an audience-driven, authentic presentation? And to do that, you have to go through a number of steps. So I'm going to walk you through some of those steps now. And again, the very first one, the most important one, is to focus on the goal. So when people get in front of a board and they say, well, my goal is, according to my boss, my goal is to give them an update on what we've been doing for the last 6 months. I make them rethink that goal out because that's what the boss said, but let's think about it. You've done a report, you've handed it in, they've been following the information. You know what? They kind of know where you've been for the last 6 months. They know how well you're doing or not doing. They don't know the details. They don't know the why behind things that are working. They don't know how you're adjusting when you need to adjust and pivot. They don't know how you see the future and where you're going to take strategic growth. And so that's the goal in a board you have to do. And when you're working with other levels of presentations, it's the same thing. What goal is critical? And here's why this is a great graphic. This archer, if he does what most of us do, multitask, he's going to try to shoot 2 of those targets. If he does that, if he tries to persuade people and inspire them equally, that arrow goes right in the middle. He fails. The only way to get a bullseye is to really understand what's the absolute number one goal. Because it doesn't mean there can't be secondary goals and that you can't address them too. But the point is you need to know exactly what's the goal. And so when you're doing a multi-step sales process set of presentations, I did one with one company in sales, 4 different presentations. You need to ask, what is the difference? Okay, because each one is going to be different. And in part, the composition of the audience from the company is going to change, in part because they're making different decisions. And it's only that very last group that's going to say, let's get to the commitment level and activate it. The first one's maybe just learning what's possible. The second one, why they need to make that move. The third one, inspire them to want to work with you. You're the ideal vendor. And then finally, then go to terms and conditions and get them involved. So you need always to be audience driven. What do they need to know now? That's your critical question that you have to ask. And then what's the best way to provide it? And so, as I said, sometimes it's multi-step presentations. That's how we do it very often in sales. Sometimes it's providing the group with the information in advance. If I'm going to an investor conference and I want people to really feel the soul of my company, and I'm the CFO making the presentation, or the CEO, or the business development person, it doesn't matter. If I give them a handout of my entire presentation at the beginning of the presentation, immediately while it's still going around, everyone takes it, opens it, skims it quickly, and then they get finished. And by the time you get to slide 2, they have finished their review of your presentation. And they're basically shutting you down while you're talking, knowing if they have a question they can ask you at the end. You've lost leader presence. You need to do that. So always ask, what is the best way for me to provide the information? And then, as I said, keep in mind what the setting is. Are you sitting around a large table like this with body language? Or are you doing what I'm doing with you right now? I'm speaking to you of using a webinar where I can't see all of you. Some of you are eating, some of you are sleeping, some of you are hanging on every word. I'm not sure what it is. But I know I have to compensate for that, just like I have to at 2 o'clock in the afternoon compensate, or at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the afternoon, evening kind of situation. What impact does this group have? I did a presentation for somebody. It was a life and death, not really. It was a life and death in terms of his job description presentation. He was either going to be transferred to Division A or B. Division A was fine, but Division B, the person hated him, and he knew he'd be out within about 3 months. So it really was his career or not career. And the presentation needed to be made to the board, which was unusual because it was he's so many low levels below that. And I said at the very end of doing a phenomenal presentation for him on why this really could be the future for the company if they buy into it. I said, take me down to the board. I'd love to see the room. And the room has got a table with 80 chairs. So you can picture how long that is. And they have a podium on one end of the table where he was going to present, and who's obviously sitting all the way at the other end? Obviously the executive director. It's a gigantic nonprofit, or CEO. So I said, between you and him, you can throw a football and probably not reach him. We've got to do something to change that. So knowing how that setting is going to impact you means you can adjust. Again, be audience driven. Find a way to close that distance. So he did his entire presentation by walking up and down from the middle position, thereby closing it and making him stand out from every other person. And by the way, the good news is he got into Division A and stayed there another 3 years. The same thing happened again. The second time, he called me, says, I think I can do it. This time I didn't help him. Sure enough, he got transferred to Division B. And 3 months later, he was out. So what happens? Okay, so what are some of the attributes? So we talked about them. Be authentic. That means know who you stand for, what you stand for. I mean, if you think about Winston Churchill, he's an amazing character, and he's obviously getting a lot of press right now because of it's 50 years since he was in charge in England. But what happened was he was rejected by the voters. He took on the position. He made the difference in many ways. Many people think he saved England. He may have saved the Western world, and then he got voted out again. Okay, so this is not about a popularity contest. You stand for an issue and you're going to fight for it, and he did, and that's critical. And his style was his very unique style. Everyone does that. Think of him now in wearing the suit and tie, always proper. Think of Steve Jobs, always in a black shirt and black pants. Okay, we all wear our different thing. What's your style? What's its message? And then, however it makes sense for us, we have to show your enthusiasm. Because sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. So you need to sell it by transferring it. You need to make sure it's infectious. And if it's new and it's authentic, it can spread. And because like the virus spread from one to the other. So you need to be able to do that. As I mentioned to you, when you're authentic and you're talking to the board, you're really trying to say, you know something, I'm not just doing my job and presenting my team's work. I'm here to help you understand where we are, where we're going, and share with you some of the issues I think we have in front so you get the best within me and I get the best within you. I get your advice. I get your new ideas. When my people make board presentations, always walk up with a major step forward because that's our focus in doing it. So it's not just a status report because I've already read your scorecard. It's not a rubber stamp of your decisions. I have a major bank person does it. Says I go in there, I show it to them. They've obviously read it. I do as they tell them. I need you to rubber stamp X, Y, Z without saying it that way, and he gets it. And he says, I feel very good because I've been able to grow my department, but I feel like I'm not doing what I should do. And that's why he came for the training, because the answer is you should have taken him to the next level, and he wasn't doing that. They are your advisors, and they want to hear from you so they can provide advice. If at the end of the day they rubber stamp, that's not advice, and that's why it doesn't work. You have to offer a challenge, and that they can confront with you, and that gives you more respect, because if you're doing that, you're showing your leadership role. So every time you present, understand it's a way for you to show you are or not a leader. Next attribute is to be a thought leader. It's where you're taking your idea. Again, it's not the what you're saying, it's the how that information takes us to the next level. Now, when we look back at 2000, roughly, when Steve Jobs had turned the company, started the turnaround of the company substantially by getting out of having so many different products and services and licensing the OS system, but cutting it down to basically 4 different kinds of Macs, and then saying, what else can we do? He changed his approach. He said, you know something? Computers use computing power. We can use computing power now to do other things that affect the consumer rather than, and we don't need that. And so he comes up with the iPod as a first place, and then eventually the iPhone and the iPad, and all of this stuff is where it's moving. And in the year to come, we're going to see more of this happening because, in part, Apple's made it possible for people to do it because it's created an ecosystem. So you have the iCloud with the information. This morning's class, we talked about Apple TV. What would it mean? How is it going to be a game changer? Why should it be done? So what you need to do is know how to focus on the growth area you want. And that's what a thought leader does. He's always looking, a period of time ahead of you. I also want to drive home the point again, we're overloaded. We don't have enough time. We're always struggling with what we do. So one of the things we also need to know is we need to focus. And to focus means, and I love this quote, means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. Okay? You really do have to pick it carefully. And I know that's something a lot of us, including me, have as a problem. We still want to do too many things and we don't say no often enough. Say it more often. When you say something, be succinct. Don't give us the jargon. Don't repeat the words you've had. Explain what it means. I used to do this thing with interns, and it's part of another presentation I do, and I make the point we went to PC Expo and a number of shows like that. System integration, we meet the system integrators, and they would all give us a jargon sentence of what is system integration, and it's how you can use lots of different systems in an enterprise to kind of work together. And we'd ask, why are you better than the guy next to you? And the answer was, because we are. I couldn't answer it because they didn't understand it either. Understand, when you give people information that doesn't add value, it's called distractive clutter. If you eliminate it, then what you're going to do is do what's important now, which we call a winning presentation. You focus on the key issues and keep it simple. Stay away from that jargon. Third part of this is you want to demonstrate trustworthiness. Again, we buy from people. When I help companies sell their products or services through an RFP, and it's $100 to $200 million deal, and they're going to sit with the buyers, a team of 4 or 5 people, it's being trustworthy to each and every member of that buying team, that they feel, wow, these are the people I trust. They're authentic. I buy it. Something goes wrong. Like always, something goes wrong. Always assume that. These are the people I want to work with because they'll figure out how to do it. So you create your own message. What is your brand? What are you all about? Okay, deliver it consistently and engage your audience. If you do that, they begin to develop trust with you. Remember, trust isn't something like a transaction. It happens once and it's over. Trust is earned over time. And if you do it over time, it makes all the difference in the world. But always remember the bad part. It can be lost in a minute. We just had yesterday another congressman hit the dust. It's amazing, okay, that they spend so much time trying to build trust and aren't authentic about it, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing these unscrupulous things. Next part of it is you want to demonstrate leadership. As I said, leaders are experts in their areas. They're thought leaders. They're acting as a leader and they're taking it to the next level. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Jack Welch was like that. And what they do is they facilitate interactions with people by seeding questions. So it's like a good teacher. A good teacher doesn't just give the facts, basically says, I'm going to teach you how to think about the area, and then be able to facilitate the questioning so that the class makes the connections, thinks it through. The customer thinks through, my God, this is great. An example. Brilliant Image was the first 24/7 computer graphics company. That meant we never closed. We never went to sleep. One of my biggest competitors, who'd been around long before we were there, about 5, 6 times our size, was also had a night shift, but it was accessible. What's the difference? If you wanted to use their service, you had to call somebody on the answer service, and then they would call someone to come in and do the job. Now, if you're Goldman Sachs and you're working on a $80 million presentation tomorrow morning, and you need to get on a plane to go there, and you can give it to an answer service who will then give it to the right person, or you can give it to Chi, that's his name, in my office ready to take it. Who are you going to give it to? And that's how we clobbered our competition, because what we did is we facilitated the process of making it done and demonstrating the leadership by saying it's about you getting a peace of mind, getting a good night's sleep is the best thing I can give you after you have your presentation, because then they're going to buy from you. When you present, it's not about just the facts. What it's really about is a strategic theme. In other words, what you want to do is give people a reason to want to work with you. So if it's customer service, what are the customer touch points that you want to focus in on? I mean, let's take an example. And unfortunately, I have to give the plus and the minus. TD Bank has done a phenomenal job in New York, especially where I am, by offering a service which is very convenient, 24/7. I mean, 7 days a week. They're open every single day for a number of hours. If you need to go in there, that's fine. But I have to share with you, even though I think they've created it, and we call that a commanding strategy because their competition can't be open that many hours. To survive, they've made so many compromises that some of their service is terrible. I yesterday had to literally call and close 2 accounts because people are inconsistent and lie or just don't know what they're doing, and took 6 months to open up these accounts, and then within literally the first transaction, I had nothing left to do with it. You want to focus on the approach. So I spend time working with the people on customer touch points. It's great to be open, but if you're not going to provide consistent service, it doesn't work. So what's your theme? Is it growth opportunities? Where can we expand in our services and our model? Take a look how Apple, with its i ecosystem, is consistently growing into new areas. It's going to be an iWatch. It's going to be an iTV. Where is it all going? What you want to do is maybe focus on strategic alliances. There's just so much you can do yourself, but you can do with many other people and how you can do it. And so if you look at all of these different services that large companies are doing, they're doing them very often with partners with other people. And so their strategic aim is growth through partnerships. Or maybe you have an alternative that you're doing. Or maybe you're focusing on talent management. I don't know if you know, but today they say it's literally kind of a benchmark day in that there are more millennials out there than there are baby boomers. How do you find the right millennials for the kind of job you're looking for? What are the qualities? Are they really different? By the way, if you'll read our blog, which will come out, I'm not sure exactly when this blog post comes out in the next couple of days. IBM did a phenomenal study to show that millennials are not as different as everyone thought. That's been my experience, so I was very happy to see a scientific study come up with the same information. And finally, maybe your thing is about sustainability and about continuity and how we do it. There are people who believe, as a Columbia professor who believes there's no such thing as there's no such thing as a sustainable sustainable competitive advantage anymore. We disagree. We think very strongly if you're really smart at doing it, Apple being an example, TD Bank could have had it. They're blowing it now. Could have been examples of companies that have what we call a commanding strategy, when where the competition can't compete easily. So when you figure out what you're presenting and it's authentic and it's grabbing your audience's attention and it's conveying constantly, you're a leader, you're an expert, you know what you're doing. Again, the structure you have to build is at the very end, going through it, because you have to remember it has to guide decision making. And that means you're dealing with logic and emotion. And what's real important to understand is, as Judge Frank in 1935 said, I listen to the case and emotionally I come up with a gut reaction of what the right answer should be, and then I use the law to rationalize it. So we make decisions decisions emotionally, and then we justify them with logic. So keep that in mind. It's about the facts and figures that help us get to the point, but ultimately it's the trust in the person, the confidence in the person. It's I want to follow this direction because I really think it's going to make a difference. Especially the irresistible influence is so important when you're making a massive change from one direction to the other. Remember, there's always a risk in making change. Most of us prefer status quo. So what you need to do is make it irresistible, something that somebody will want to follow. And there are many, and not enough time to do this here, persuasion strategies. For those of you who know, I'm a social psychologist. This is an area of specialty for me. Different ways of viewing things that support what we do and encourage people to do it. Social proof is when we're looking for other people. Third party credibility is the same thing. Reciprocity, if you want something, give before you do it. Reverse risk something. If something doesn't work out, they get it for free. And remember, Kahneman won the Nobel Prize for Behavioral Economics for discovering people don't just go after gain attainment. They actually prefer to avoid a loss. And so if you're going to present something from an influence point of view, show them how they're not going to lose, but what they're actually going to do is they're going to gain. I'm sorry, they're not going to lose by following you. Finally, as a presenter, engage your audience. Use powerful words. Use power words that grab people's attention. Okay. There's Elizabeth Loftus did this phenomenal study, 40, 50 years ago, where two juries heard the same case. The only difference is in one case, someone drops a rock and cracks a windshield, and the other one drops a rock and smashes the windshield. $10,000 difference in jury verdicts. Power words. Are we grabbing the left brain and the right brain? Are we influencing logic and emotions? We need to speak clearly. We need to be able to handle our body language so that we're getting attention. Look at Martin Luther King repeating over and over again the same thing so people bought it. I have a dream and you can share my dream. And his language, his tone, etc. All of this is part of it. Again, without a good message, it won't matter. But if you have a good message and you structured it right and then you polish those skills, you're a killer. Again, the goal is to project a leader presence. And so you need to ask the question, how do I do it? First, start off with what's the goal? What are the attributes you need to project? Is it expertise? Is it confidence? Is it authority? Are you following the ADAP rules throughout the entire principle? What you want to do is you want to develop those presentation skills that are going to make the best difference for the setting that you're in. Always practice. It's amazing when people come to me and they say, I've got this presentation. It's worth millions and millions of dollars. How much do you practice it? Oh, I got about 20, 30 minutes to practice. Doesn't make any sense. Again, what does that tell you about being authentic, about caring about it? And finally, when you get information back, that's what our training program does when Presentation Excellence does its training. We give you feedback to tell you what's working and what's not working. And it's amazing. People think things work that don't work, and vice versa. Things that don't work actually do work. And so it's really good information to get from customers. This is what we do every day with our leaders. Whether you're a Vistage member running companies from $5 to $500 million, or Presentation Excellence client running billion dollar companies, or just startups that are trying to do it, but you know you're on your way up. You know that the bottom line that you have to convey is one idea, that you're a leader and that you should be followed. And if you do that, you'll be a hero. And that's the reason we get up at absurd hours of the morning, 24/7 sometimes, to be able to be there for our clients to make sure that every presentation they make is a winner. So 93 becomes 94%, which is what we try to do with this client, and move all our clients up to close more deals, help people advance their professions, and do more good in the world. And I want to thank you for attending today's webinar. Our focus again was on helping you become a much more effective presenter and demonstrate a leader presence. If you want more information with the many things we do at the Presentation Excellence Group, go to that website and you'll see it. We have, as I mentioned to you, through Better Way workshops and webinars. We have a number of webinars coming up next week. Just to give you an idea, everyone is Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Next week's on branding, the life cycle of a brand, how to maximize marketing. I'll be back. That's with Steve Mazer. I'll be back 2 weeks from now on leading the innovative organizations. It is probably the single biggest issue every company needs to do. How do we unleash and sustain creativity? For those of you who are planning for the summer on really maximizing the power of internships, how do you build a high ROI mentoring internship program? For those of you who realize that companies are not doing as well as they should when it comes to strategy, culture, and leadership, we'll focus you on how to do that and introduce you to Eval to Win, which is a tool that will help you. I mentioned before the importance of having a sustainable competitive advantage. That's Commanding Strategies, April 22nd. We'll then focus, for those of you who are negotiating, whether it's internally or externally, some key strategies and tactics to make you a better negotiator. We'll then turn to rainmaking for those of you in business development, focusing on referral marketing. And finally, for those of you who want to be like Jack Welch and figure out how do I help my leaders become the kind of leaders who can take this company to the next level, stay tuned through our May 13th program, which is our Next Gen Leadership. And that will end our series for the spring. We'll do another one in the fall. So if you know someone who's a great presenter that would like to join us in our group, that's fine. Let us know. If you have topics you'd like to see us address, we'd be glad to help you. We're at the top of the clock. If no one's been typing in any questions all this time, that's why I've been watching it. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. You have my email. You have my phone number there. We're glad to help you. We look forward to seeing you at future programs. We wish you a phenomenal day and phenomenal week, and hopefully one where the